Welcome everyone to the Enlightened Masculinity podcast. We're well into the double digits, and we're looking way ahead for the triple digits of episodes as we continue to expound, which means to talk about in an elegant way enlightened masculinity. Got a wonderful topic today. Akash, my co-host, is going to really enlighten us as to a Kundalini, a little bit of Kundalini energy, which everybody that's a man and everybody should know that's following this podcast, we're yogis, should at least have heard the word Kundalini, however you want to pronounce it. And so before we get into it, we'll do some quick intros. And as you know, this is our opinions and our experience. And so take it as such, be an adult when you process these ideas. That being said, we're speaking from experience and we're good at talking about it. So, really consider what we say. And so I'm one of your hosts, Yogi Chris, PhD. I'm the founder of Ninth Limb Yoga and travel the world teaching yoga. I have many books, many podcasts, and also the PhD in that human university that so many people seem to value so much. But don't let that fool you. I'm a very spiritual guy. So this podcast has a co-host. He is a biotech research analyst for the biggest drug dealers in the world, aka the drug pharma, big pharma up there in the Northeast. He's from Montclair, New Jersey. He's also a registered yoga teacher and starting his yoga following there, the Rising Suns in New Jersey and the surrounding areas. And he's also a really good guy. So we follow the same teacher. We have common teachers, and that's Arash Sapar Dibazar. And so I'm welcoming Akash to the show. And please, anything you want to say here in the beginning, and also just go ahead and take it away right into your Kundalini experience.
Brother, thank you for the illustrious introduction. As always, really appreciate it. And it's super excited to be here today. Before I start, I want to say if you guys enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, share. We'd love to get these ideas and I suppose energies out to the world and for others to enjoy. Additionally, if you are not already, I highly encourage you to check out our private Facebook group where Yogi Chris and I give some free teachings to you all. It's any experiences that we may have had within the week that trigger within us teachings that we've learned through our yoga practice, through our communication practices, and so on and so forth. So highly encourage you guys to check that out. In regards to today's topic, I wanted to talk about an experience I had this past week in yoga class. It was this past Thursday, and I was telling Yogi Chris about this. This past Thursday was the first time I was able to get my lotus pose down. So for anyone who knows about yoga and what lotus pose is, it's when you're sitting down on the floor, the base of your spine is connected to the, Yogi Chris is just gonna demo it right now for us right here. Just super cash, like no big deal. Whereas for me, it's like, okay, it takes a little time. But this is lotus pose, as you can see from Yogi Chris's demo. And I was able to get this for the first time this past week. Really, I had a lot of tightness within my hips, and it's about unlocking that and unlocking all of that. But during the practice itself, in the lead up to it, I felt this energy kind of channel up through my body. I've been reading about Kundalini energy quite a bit, and there is Kundalini yoga, which channels this energy up, and it's supposed to really get you in touch with your, I guess, kind of your primal life force energy. For those of you who don't know, Kundalini it's known as sexual energy. So it's channeling your sexual energy up your spine, and to transmute it into, I guess, into spirit, or to elevate you, to enlighten you. In this sense, I was able to feel the energy kind of move through my body. So there's a pattern that it goes up. It's kind of like a double spiral. So it starts as a spiral. So it starts at the base of your spine, goes up in one direction, and then reverses kind of around the heart area and goes back up the other way, all the way into your skull itself, and does a little, there you go. Yogi Chris with the demos and the dancing over here. I love it. Nonetheless, I was able to feel this just all channel up, and I've had this experience throughout my life where I'll feel it's kind of like a drop from the I feel it in my brain area, but I know it's from the pineal gland. I feel like a drop that kind of, it's like an IV drip, if you will. And I feel it go down, and then it'll travel all the way down to the base of my spine, and then I'll get like this little shake. And this happens to me quite often. It'll be when I'm taking a cold shower. It'll be even sometimes just during the day. And when it's like a little dose of like, I feel like straight up alive as a result of it. Absolutely incredible to just, I just get like, ugh, and I feel awake and alive and able to perceive things around me that many others may not necessarily see. But I found it to be such a strong way of experiencing life around me, and it's something that I do. As you guys know, I practice semen retention in general, and so as part of the practice itself is channeling this energy up through your body and towards your head. I'm very like used to this and comfortable with this, but it's interesting to have experienced it like in yoga class this past Thursday, and getting it in Lotus itself it's different. It's a totally different experience in the sense of the ability to sit down and really be rooted down to the floor was I don't know, something else. So I wanted to talk about that a bit today. Yogi Chris, I don't know if you've had any experiences with Kundalini itself or anything of this nature, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts, lots of experiences. It's super interesting, especially the idea of semen retention. Angie Estrella in the background is going to tell you about. Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin. There's so much. There's a lot of potential energy in the spine, so much potential energy to experience. And not all energy is just like explosive, like raw power, horsepower energy. It is the power of your perception, the sensitivity and the precision with which you can perceive the atmosphere, the wind, the words of people's communication, subtle energies, auras, your own aura and chakra system and nadi system, and subtle body energy. What's imprinted in your subconscious mind. There's so much to perceive, and then just your own anatomy, the lymph channels and the blood vessels and the heart beating and hormone excretions. I mean, all of that, you have the ability to perceive it if you can open up your energies of perception. Because all of your senses, the 5 gross senses that everybody agrees on that actually exist, there's 5 other senses also, but there's 5 senses that everybody agrees on. Those all require energy to see. Seeing is energy, hearing, that's auditory energy, taste is chemical energy, olfactory, smelling is, and touch and temperature and all of that. Appropriate, it's all energy. And, there's so much potential energy when you unlock your spine. And like you said, unlocking your hips opens up a big connection with the horsetail at the bottom of your spine. Your spinal cord actually kind of ends around your solar plexus, and then it just kind of horsetails down to the pelvic floor, which means it's like a bunch of little hairs of nerves and whatever. And there's so much tension in the hips from sitting in a chair for 30% of your life and plus just Western lifestyle outside of sitting in a chair, that there's not too much mobility there, and pretty soon if you don't move something, it falls asleep. And so all of that awareness down in the sexual region and the lower organs, it's pretty mute. We're kind of numb to it. It's kind of gray. And when you start opening that up, it's just incredible things happen. So I've had lots of experiences. Most of them have actually not happened in Lotus. And some of them have happened seated. I remember my first one, I believe, was in a Warrior 2 posture. In the Warrior 2 posture. And another one that was really, really profound, if you know the Baddha Konasana, which is like everybody knows is the butterfly stretch, your feet together, knees apart, in a shoulder stand. So shoulder stand in the Baddha Konasana position, in the butterfly. Those 2 moments I remember, those were happening in my first year of yoga, but my first year of yoga was just like 2-3 hours a day of practice at home by myself. And so after, I don't know, somewhere between like 6 and 9 months of practice, I had those 2 experiences very close together. I forget, maybe a few weeks apart or something. I didn't know what to make of it. I tell you what, so many of these experiences, these mystical experiences, I don't know what to make of them when they happen. It's afterwards, usually after it happens 2 or 3 times, that then you start to, the subconscious maybe makes a pattern, and so you can start to get a little understanding about it. Looking back on it now, yeah, I unlocked my spine, little vertebral shifts, where there's just like adhesion in the connective tissue that connects vertebra to vertebra. And when that moves, there's a lot of spinal fluid that moves. The spine suffocates. The spine does not have a circulatory system. Just, gets nutrition through osmosis. So if there's too much compression in your discs, your spine basically starves, and then it atrophies. And so it's essential that you have great spinal mobility. That's why a lot of Kundalini yoga is a lot of gyrating motions, a lot of spinning motions, a lot of twisting motions. They really focus it on the spine. That can create complications. I mean, there's downsides to that. But those are basic. I mean, they were super blissful, it felt literally like aligning. This is where I get the idea for anybody in the silent flute of alignment is a line in the mind. It's alignmente. So alignment doesn't mean you're in a line. It just means that in your mind, you have straightened out. And energy is in the mind, because mind, all is mind. You were talking about like the readings that we've been doing. We read the Master Key System. All is mind. Everything you're aware of is in your awareness, which is in your mind.
Yeah, brother. So I was reading, literally just before this practice itself, I was reading the Master Key System, and I walked into the studio, into the classroom with the book, and I was going through one of the chapters, and I truly do think a lot of the experience, like I think the book was unlocking something within me to be able to have that experience. I mean, I've been practicing the lotus position, and really, I mean, I've got half bound lotus on each side for a while, but I really do think it was like as a result of reading that text immediately before the practice itself. And it was a basic Ashtanga practice. It wasn't anything like super special in that sense, but that's exactly what made it special in many ways too. Getting back to what you were saying earlier, I'd once heard this saying from a yogi in one of my classes. She'd been practicing for like 30 years or so, and she's like, age is measured not by number, but the flexibility of your spine. And I thought that was a really cool saying, for one. But as I continue to like think about it more and more, I find it to be truer in the sense of adaptability. Being adaptable is the most important. We talk about this all the time, but being adaptable is the most important thing for any living organism. It's not the strongest that survive, but it's the most adaptable. And so by being adaptable in your spine and being able to move your spine in all of these different ways, it's a reflection of how adaptable are you in your mind. And as we know, those who are adaptable in the mind, then able to be open-minded or change their mind if they hear of a better idea that comes before them, is super, super important. On Wall Street, they say the best analysts are the ones who have strong opinions loosely held. And so it's, again, the same idea of being adaptable. I think it's really reflected in the spine itself and such. So that was another little piece that I wanted to throw in there that kind of fired off within my head itself. And then lastly, I guess, as I've been going about and practicing this more and more, I mean, in your experiences, I guess unlocking new poses, if you will, or unlocking new shapes to your body, have you experienced that, like, you have because I had a vision of an old trauma, actually. Like I vividly remember an old trauma as I was able to open up my hip a little bit more. Have you experienced this type of thing when you're going through new poses, or like when you've gotten a new pose for the first time?
I'm thinking new poses.
Well, I can explain maybe what I mean in a bit more detail if that's helpful.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this past, like I was telling, as like during Lotus itself, as I was grabbing that, I felt so it's funny because in that look, it's my right hip that's been tight mostly. My left hip has been a lot more open, but it's my right one that's been much more tight. And I remember when I was young, I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old, and I was climbing up like furniture in my room. It's like a dresser that had like shelves on the top of it. So it was like maybe like a 10-foot dresser. The bottom shelves, like I climbed up on, and I was trying to get something at the top. Anyways, I ended up falling, and it was just after like I took a shower. I think my like parents like hid like my Game Boy or some shit like up there. So it was just after a shower, and like I ended up falling, and I cut myself like the inside of my thigh on the dresser, on the corner of the dresser. My brother was in the room as well, and he was just like watching me and whatnot. And then my parents came into the room because like I was like obviously like in pain, and like I was bleeding, and they were like, "What happened?" And in that moment, I was like, I didn't want to get in trouble in the sense of like saying, "Oh, I was trying to go for the Game Boy, so I was like." So like I climbed up there and I hurt myself. I blamed it on my brother, and I said that like my brother pushed me. And so it was a lie. It was like a bad lie. And my parents, like, I think my dad ended up like beating him for it. But the whole thing was just like, I vividly saw that memory as I had gotten into Lotus. And it was like I experienced that whole experience all over again. And I've had this for a couple other poses as well. Like when I'm opening up different postures and such, I'll have like maybe not intense vision, not as intense necessarily as that, but I'll have visions of experiencing different moments in life. So I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like this, or if it's unique or not. Again, these are, as we've talked about, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason for experiencing what we do in many ways, but it's interesting, and it feels like there's some type of connection there.
That's because there always is. There is always rhyme and reason. It's a cause and effect universe. Nothing is accident. There is absolutely rhyme and reason for everything. And sometimes the cause is so far displaced from the effect that we see it as random. But time and space is an illusion anyway. So why lotus pose was triggering that memory versus why not, I don't know, cobra pose or something. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, not everything needs to be explained away, but nothing is accident. And, this is part of Master Key System. There's a lot of things that you say that I would love to like go into like a teaching on. And so what I'll probably end up doing is after this, guys, I do my Silent Flute live lecture. So I'll do the Silent Flute lecture in about an hour is when we start. And then tonight also we have our Enlightened Masculinity Sangha. This is a once-a-month talk on the first Saturday of every month. And I don't know that we've decided on a time, probably like 7 p.m. It kind of depends on, we have a teacher, Arash Sapardi Bazar, and he does lectures on Saturdays. They're kind of unpredictable. Sometimes it'll be like an hour or two before that they'll post about it. So chances are we'll probably go for like 7 o'clock, I think. Does that sound like a good time? Yeah. So 7 o'clock. And if something needs to change, then we'll just push it back an hour or whatever. But so 7 o'clock tonight, I'll go more into some of these things because I don't want to lecture you on it right now. But I'll definitely give my take on some of these things. One of the first things I want to say, Akash, is be careful. Sometimes it took me years to distinguish my pelvis from my hip. You have a pelvis joint and you have a hip joint. And a lot of times when you think that the hip is tighter than the other hip, it's really your pelvis is not symmetric. And so you're not able to reach the same angle with the opposite hip. So just especially in half-bound lotus, just be aware of if you're stretching your pelvis versus your hip socket. And your hip socket is in your groin. And as far as, you need to be sensitive to catch these memories. And we have Stephanie saying the first Hermetic principle, it is. And, there's 7 Hermetic principles, and I learned them all really rapidly and over many repetitions through Rosh Zapardi Bazar. And, memories are happening all the time, man. And the more and more I do yoga, and it's been like 8 years now, and it's just daily practice, and especially when I get into the pranayama, you really push the oxygen deep into your nervous system, and that will really stoke the fire of your memories. They're just latent impressions in your nervous system. And you oxygenate the part of your neurons that store that memory, the hardware that stores that memory, and you'll flare up the pictures, you'll flare up the sound memory, you'll flare up the sentences. And if you're perceptive enough, you'll just catch them. So the more and more I do these practices, I'll just catch memories popping up like in everyday life. Like I'll just be walking or talking or, whatever, and I'll remember something from childhood or any time before now. what will eventually happen is, and there's an old story of this, it's like Rinpoche, like Buddhist master. And it was after China took back Tibet, they went and annexed it. And so a lot of Tibetan monasteries were destroyed. A lot of the Tibetan monks were killed, but many of them took refuge in northern India. And, Indian government gave the Dalai Lama and the whole Tibetan culture, like basically refuge in northern India. And so they're interviewing this one Rinpoche, and he was talking about some of his mystical experiences. He was like, when I was a boy, I was very devout in my practice, and I was sit in this retreat. And when they say retreat, they don't mean like Western yoga retreats where you go to like a hotel and you have like food made for you, and you listen to music in your downtime, and you wear your Lululemon and drink your coconut water. Like, no, retreat means you go sit in a cave and somebody brings you one meal a day of like barley, and that's it. Or you have a little hut. If it's not a cave, you sit in a hut, and once a day somebody will come and bring you a bowl of barley, but you have no interaction with other people. That's retreat. And so he's like, one day he was a 10-year-old boy, and he was like, I was sitting in retreat for a couple months, and I was in this cave, and I was losing devotion. I was like getting bored, basically. I mean, can you imagine a 10-year-old boy like doing that? And he was like, and I was basically begging somebody, I forget the name of who he was, but he was basically like, that was the guru of the guru, his lineage, like whatever the original guy was. And he was like, I was basically praying for this guy. Let's call him Akash. And I was paying for Akash to, no, let's not use Akash because that's you. Let's use Babaji. Let's just call him Babaji. And he was like, I was praying for Babaji, like, give me some sign that I'm doing it right. And just then, at the head of the cave, in golden light, appeared Babaji. And guys, Babaji is an actual character in the autobiography of Yogi and the Kriya Yoga lineage, so I'm just picking that name. It wasn't Babaji, it was someone else. But Babaji appears right there. He appears at the head of the cave, gives him some emotional communication, which means it's like the feeling of you're doing it right, and he translated it as, your language, your brain can translate the feeling into some words, translated it as basically you're doing it right, like keep going. You're very devout, keep going. And when the guy left, because the boy was kind of frozen and like, not really, maybe fear, but startlement. Like, I mean, that's crazy. Like somebody just appears and they're covered in gold and they tell you this thing. And so when the guy disappeared, he got up and went to where he was, and he was like looking around, like what happened? When he looked down, there was a footprint in the rock where the guy had sunk into the rock with his foot. And so later he's telling a story where he's recalling this story to somebody. It's like a year later or sometime later, months later, and he's telling this story to somebody. And as he's telling the story, the people that are listening to him, they're like, hey, Rinpoche, look, your foot. And his foot was melting into the rock. It was sinking into the rock as he was telling the story. And then when he stopped telling the story, it stopped happening. He took his foot out, and there was his footprint in the rock. And so that's like a magical omen or whatever. And so that guy, he was talking about, I remembered when I was a boy, and then he told the story. And then he's like, and I remember when I was a young boy. And, he told a story of his parents. And then he was like, and I remembered in the past life who my sister was. And I named that sister. And people were startled by that was the correct name of some family that had happened before him. And he was like, but I don't expect people to believe that I remembered before my life. So let's just say I remembered when I was a young boy. So the idea being that the more you unlock your system, the more you will remember backwards in time. And the thing is that time to the spirit is not measured by this lifetime of your body. So more and more you will remember things that happened before this life. And it's going to be a very tricky thing with your psychology, with your psyche, because you might go crazy if you indulge in it in a uncontrolled way, because it's going to be difficult to discern, am I just making it up or did this actually happen? And the long story short is you're making it all up anyway, because it's all mind. It's all in your mind. It's just a memory, and you can totally change the memory. But if you want the truth of the matter, the more you unlock your system, you will remember further and further back. And, I'm not sure how useful those memories are, but I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. No, this reminds me of something, again, something that I noticed, this was in yesterday's practice more so, was breathing. The deeper I breathe, there's points where I can breathe so deep that I actually feel visceral pains like all like throughout my body. In the sense of I'll feel it like in my like inside of my muscle, like inner muscles. So if I breathe really, really deep, I can feel this all through. It could go all the way down to my leg. It could go up my arm and such. And these are like the deepest breaths that I'm taking. And as you know, I mean, Yogi Chris, we both, as yogis, I mean, deep breathing, that's like the name of the game, you know? But I found that like, I think that this is like the just understanding the connection with the nervous system a bit more. And these are where the past traumas are actually stored. And so by breathing more deeply, you're able to identify, okay, this is where it is in my body, that the trauma or whatever, the pain, whatever you may be experiencing is stored. By breathing out of it, you're allowing some of it to go. So by focusing on your attention on these parts of your body while breathing in deeply and exhaling out, you're slowly letting go of some of this tension. And it's not going to happen like, oh, okay, well, I've noticed this like deep pain here. I'm going to breathe 5 deep breaths and it'll be gone. Like, no, you've probably put a lot of tension and such, and you stored a lot in there. But it's going to take a very long time to slowly let go of these things. And so I don't know. It was something I noticed yesterday, and I've noticed before, but I've noticed over time that this is shifting. So that there's certain parts where when like what I thought was a deep breath like a year ago to me is like a normal breath, versus a deep breath like today in 2 years is probably going to be like, again, like it may be a shallower breath for me. But the pains themselves are moving. So I remember I would have one more so on my left, like upper left side, closer to my heart. That one's pretty much, it's almost gone. I don't really feel it all too much right now. But I'm feeling it more so on my right side of my body, like upper chest and such, going all the way down my side body and stuff. I don't know if have you experienced something like this, Yogi Chris, or this, I don't know, your thoughts on this, because I can tell there's a lot brewing in there.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's lots to say. Yeah, there's, just muscular adhesions, pockets of tension. You know how like you'll do like work and you'll get like knots in your muscle, KNOTS, knots, and those are just adhesions. And so you get these adhesions on your heart muscle, you get these adhesions on your intercostal muscles, which are around your lungs on the inside of your ribs. And when you go to fully expand, I mean, it's likened to like a cramping or a knot that you're trying to stretch, but it doesn't want to give, it doesn't want to let go. And, why is there a knot there? Something that happened in the past. And it's something, I'm glad I found you guys through Arash. This talk is very interesting. Awesome. Glad you're here too. And, my big thing with trauma, because, it's especially in the community of like yogis, massage therapists, personal development even, like, what a bad word. What a curse word. Like, I hate that word. But, trauma only matters to me if it comes up in my communication with people. So, like, I see it, it's very possible to kind of unlock memories, unlock traumas, recall a memory, and seemingly handle it on your lonesome. But then you go and interact with people not aware that your behavior pattern is coded by that memory and quote by that trauma or whatever. And maybe coming to terms or addressing the memory, it doesn't change the behavior necessarily. The behavior comes out when I interact with other people. And so I definitely think both sides of the coin are needed, where there's like a solo individual practice where, free from the judgment of other people, I can dive into what's going on inside of me and be a little bit more perceptive of it, because I'm away from distractions, noises, sounds, opinions of other, but then that's got to be taken to the people. You got to take yourself to the people, interact with the people, new people especially, because new impressions are so invaluable. You interact with the same people over and over again, and it becomes a pattern of behavior there. And so constantly interacting with, or maybe not constantly, I wouldn't say, but like regularly and frequently interacting with new people, making new first impressions, and then going back to your whatever your spiritual practice is, and gaining understanding from that, I think is essential. And I don't know if that was what you asked me for, but that's what.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And one of the things that I think this was Hypnotica who mentioned this during EC2, was that our language, and I know this is something that Arash and Vince would agree with as well.
Everybody knows EC2 is a conference that was over New Year's Eve in Los Angeles where some people came together and taught us things.
Yes, the Evolution of Consciousness conference. It was the idea how like language is very limiting, and our technology, like our smartphones, etc., apps, all of this stuff, is increasing and is changing at such a rapid pace, but the words that we use aren't. If you look back at the words that we use today and the words that we used 10 years ago, they're pretty much the same. I mean, we've added a couple hundred words to the dictionary, but if you think about it, the words that we've added to the dictionary, like Google or things like this, they're like most, like maybe not only that, but
LOL.
Right. So it's like they're not expressing more complex ideas, though. The ideas, we're limiting our ideas actually by the way that we express our words. And so in this sense, I agree with you. Like trauma is probably not the appropriate word for it, and it has its own connotations or like it means, it has so many like attachments to it or different meanings to it, if you will. And we don't come up with new words for some of these newer ideas. So I mean, Yogi Chris, I think it's really on us in many ways to start coining some new terms and terminology.
Yeah, we're at the cutting edge of that. You know, there was somebody the other day that was talking about, oh, I was out with this girl and she was like, to release blockages, or there was so much blocked up or something like that. I forget what she said. And like, man, I hate that word. I was like, there's not blockage, there's potential for release. And so Angelica, Dr. Ace is commenting here, Chris, could it also be where the bliss is stored? I would say, no, bliss is not stored. Bliss is the result of a free flow of energy. When you remove the tension or blockage or whatever you call it, remove the adhesions and the energy and the circulation flows, bliss is the natural result of that. So that's how I, you know, so yeah, when we're talking about trauma, I don't know what's the terminology. Trauma issues are in your tissue, you know, the coded patterns, the, you know, whatever it is, when the unconscious patterns, like traumas, I don't know, trauma, like, I don't know, impressions, you know, the samskaras, these, whatever they are. In Scientology, they call them like engrams. You know, these engrams, these pictures stored with words in your nervous system, in your subconscious mind that you're just operating off of. You know, the subroutines. I don't know. We'd have to invent maybe some new words, but
we will. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when, and as we clarify them more. You know, I think it's as we, and these conversations help with that, right? Because it's by hearing your experience and hearing my experience and seeing what are the commonalities between them that we're able to be like, oh, this is a commonality, but there's no word that actually exists for this right now. Or there's no word that actually accurately captures this idea. Like, and then at that point, it's like, well, what sounds like it would work best? So yeah, I don't think we have to do it right this second of like, okay, we're going to coin a whole new terminology. Get your notebooks out, guys. But I think over time, as we continue to converse and whatnot, I really do think we will continue to find new verbiage. And I think this is everyone within IMC itself, whether it be Arash, Vince, Yuri, you, etc. We're going to continue to just grow this vocabulary and really allow others to really understand what does it mean. So, Yogi Chris, I think we start wrapping up a little bit, getting to closing thoughts and letting everyone know about the Sangha tonight.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll hand it over to you about the Sangha. I want to talk about this thing Dr. Ace is mentioning. What about blissful memories? I would say that there are no blissful memories. There are memories that feel good, but bliss is not, if you really tap into it, like the memory, if you are feeling bliss there is so much more bliss to be found in the present moment. If you're in a memory, you are not perceiving what's happening around you. And so, yeah, it might feel really good. It might be a good memory, but true bliss will be just a flow. Like if you've ever been in like, we're talking about yoga a lot today. So there's this pose called Shavasana. And after you do a really rigorous yoga practice, man, you lay in Shavasana, at some point, can't even tell like where your body ends and the atmosphere begins. You just become like one. The air in your lungs is the air outside of your lungs. You're just like one with the air. And there's just like your pores are open. You almost feel like your skin is breathing. And like there's a bliss there, but you're not in a memory. But if you remember a time that you were doing that, like everybody does yoga, you can remember a time I was in Shavasana and it felt really good. The memory of that is very different than the experience of it. Experience of it is bliss. The memory of it is just a good memory.
Completely. Shavasana, amazing pose. It's a great way to end up the practice. But as noted, we will be having a Sangha later this evening, so donation-based, where Yogi Chris and I will talk for probably about an hour or so about any topic of interest to you guys if you have specific questions. If not, we have our own ideas as well that we're more than happy to jump into.
Yeah, I'm definitely bringing some topic ideas. You know, this is very different than the podcast. The podcast, we're having a conversation. There's probably some gold nuggets that we get here. You know, if you listen the whole time, if you listen to all 23 episodes, I'm sure you've gleaned or extracted some really, useful things that you can integrate in your life. The Sangha tonight is specifically for delivering you an outcome, to transform something about your mind, something about your thought process in enlightened masculinity. You know, today was specifically very yoga related, and, that's cool. Our episodes have been more mental related, social game, interacting related, male-female related. And so we'll touch upon some of those topics. I would definitely recommend, Akash, bring some of your gold ideas, something tight that you can deliver somebody like a teaching. And we'll also interact with you and make sure that we get something customized to whoever shows up.
Awesome. And on that note, I mean, as noted, if you guys are really enjoying this content, I highly encourage you to check out our private Facebook group. I continue to post videos just about 2 to 3 times a week on various topics. So encourage you to check that out. Additionally, if you guys are checking us out on the podcasting apps, like, share, subscribe. And then lastly, Yogi Chris, tomorrow I'll be doing Sunset Club in my area, and I'll repeat this again tomorrow itself. But basically, we go and watch sunset together. I grab all of the most interesting, eclectic, sexy people around, and I'm like, all right, we're going to go watch sunset together. It's incredible. Make some incredible connections between everyone. So if you are in the New York, New Jersey area, come on out. It will be an absolute blast. So with that, I turn it back over to you with any closing thoughts and statements.
That's perfect. That's the way to end it, guys. So look forward to seeing you in the Enlightened Masculinity group. Go to Facebook, Enlightened Masculinity, and we'll see you tonight on the Sangha at 7 p.m. Eastern. And thank you, Akash. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have guest speaker Rooster IMC, so we'll have 3 of us here talking about social game. See you tomorrow, everybody, or see you tonight.